or...
Hold on a minute, you said I was agreeing with you, Matt, and now you disagreed with yourself, which is really, really confusing. You gave a 10 to a Great Helm, which is a much more primitive form of protection.
I've actually got a real Great Helm, so I'm going to try and show you the problems with this.
Yeah, the problems with that is that it's not a real Great Helm.
Free to disagree with me, tell me in the comments where I've got it wrong and which one you might have worn into battle.
I've just received approval from him to do just that, so let's go. Alright, hear me out. I'm in a little bit of a situation here today because I'm reviewing a video posted by History Hit. What a surprise. But you know, History Hit has got, as you know, some historians that I like and some historians that I hate. And the thing is that in this case you may not be able to see it because he's wearing a helmet. But the historian here is, what's his freaking name, Matt Lewis. And to be honest, I like Matt Lewis, and every time I've seen him so far talk about the medieval period, he did a good job. So, why am I saying that I'm in a little bit of a situation then? This video is gonna be great. Well, I don't know about that because, see, the title is Medieval Historian Ranks the Most Famous Helmets from the Middle Ages. He ranks it, right? Now, I can be a little pedantic. Remove little. I can be pedantic. I can be extremely pedantic. I can be extremely annoyingly pedantic when I review helmets and talk about pros and cons. The thing is that, of course, we can disagree and that could be great. You could think that the whatever helmet that I love is not really good. Fine. Thing is though, the helmet he's wearing on the thumbnail, oh gosh, that looks absolutely horrible. So I really hope he's not using any data taken from that sort of experience, putting it into the tier list, because that would not be a very good analysis. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's really good.
This might be really, really unpopular. I'd imagine this is quite disorienting, and I'm just going to give it 10 out of 10.
Yeah, okay, just from the beginning there, I can tell that I think I was right. He is using this, unfortunately, not well-made replica of a early pot helm, Great Helm. But the real problem is another one here, ladies and gentlemen.
This might be really, really unpopular.
This is a problem. He's putting the Salot in D. Now, Matt, hear me out, hear me out. I think you're a really cool guy. But careful where you put that Salot, man. I hope this was just a joke.
I'd imagine this is quite disorienting, and I'm just going to give it 10 out of 10. Hi, I'm Matt Lewis, the host of the Gone Medieval podcast. This is not working at all.
Because that helmet is horrible.
I'm Matt Lewis, the host of the Gone Medieval podcast and medieval presenter for History Hit. As you can probably tell, today we're talking about medieval helmets. What might you have worn if you were going to charge into battle? More importantly for this, what would I have worn?
Interesting. So, first of all, he's focusing specifically on battle. That's nice. So I imagine he won't consider like jousting, tourneys, and that sort of stuff. That's fair. So it's a choice for the video, I suppose.
So in front of me, I've got this tier list, which goes C all the way up to A, and then we've also got an S tier for anything that is absolutely outstanding. So I'm going to work my way through the pictures that we have of each of these helmets and think about where I would put them on this scale from worst to best. And this is always going to be my subjective opinion.
Sure.
You're free to disagree with me. Tell me in the comments where I've got it wrong and which one you might have worn into battle.
Very nice. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. So I've just received approval from him to do just that. So let's go.
So first up, the Viking helmet. I mean, this is absolutely iconic. Everybody knows this is a Viking helmet that Vikings wore into battle, but they didn't. No one in the medieval period ever wore that horned helmet. This is a creation of 19th century operatics who thought Vikings would look great in a big horned helmet. Nobody ever wore it. It's not even getting on the ranking board.
Yeah, fair. I appreciate that. I think just for precision, I'm not correcting him, just adding, the helmet with horns did exist. It's just that it wasn't worn into battle as far as we understand. And it was instead, so he's correct with that, might have been something connected to tribalistic ceremonies and religious icons.
Next up, a Spangle Helm. And so this is sections of metal held together by loops of metal that are riveted onto it. And this is the most basic functional form of head protection used throughout Europe in the early medieval period.
Yeah, for the most basic, I would say a servalier is even more basic than that. Really, the only thing that this one adds is the nasal and the fact that it the way it's constructed, but a servilier or a secret helm will be even more basic than this.
You can see sometimes they added a bit of nasal protection on here. Quite often there was chain coifs that went round it as well, so there would be extra protection
Correct.
for various parts of the head. But this was a nice, fairly simple to produce, fairly mass producible helmet that was common during the early medieval period. I'm going to try and give each of these helmets a rating as we go, out of 10, for the protection that it would offer, the restriction on your visibility that it might give you, and the comfort that I think you would have wearing the helmet. So if you think...
Oh, that's nice. I appreciate that. That makes it more fun than I thought. So maybe I can interject and see if we give different numbers. Oh, this is really fun. I appreciate that. Also, this is from the Bayeux tapestry. So yeah, they're wearing nasal helmets in this case, 11th century.
Think about a Spangle Helm. In terms of the protection, for the period it's doing quite a good job, but it's only really looking after the top of your head. You might add a nasal piece to it, which could add a tiny bit, but this is doing nothing for your neck, it's doing nothing for your face, it's doing nothing below the line at which that helmet would stop. So I'm going to give this a solid 5 out of 10 for protection.
Okay, personally, with all due respect, Matt, I may disagree a little bit on this because the helmet is supposed to be, as you just correctly explained, it's supposed to be worn with either a mail coif underneath it or, subsequently, aventail. So yeah, you're basically not really reviewing the complete set at this point. So I think it would be a little unfair to judge the helmet without what we know would have been worn with it. But that's just me.
And what do we think about visibility for this? There should be nothing really to restrict your visibility. Maybe if you've added the nasal piece to it, you're going to catch that in your vision.
No, actually, visibility would be perfect. I have worn, of course, helmets with a nose guard, and it does not change anything for your visibility. The reason being, when they are thin like this, and the reason is the same as why you don't really see your nose every time you look forward. Your brain cancels it out. It's as simple as that. So no, 10 out of 10 for visibility.
But otherwise, this shouldn't prevent you from seeing everything all around you on the battlefield. I think we can probably give this a 10 out of 10 for visibility.
We agree.
And if we think about comfort, this is kind of cobbled together from several pieces of metal, riveted together. You'd want to be wearing something underneath this, I think, to add protection to your head, although that's true of every helmet that we're going to think about. None of these would have sat directly on your head. So I'm probably going to give this a 7 out of 10 for comfort. Should be fairly comfortable.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I would give it even a higher level of comfort, to be honest, because I mean, if you give 7 to this, what are you going to give to a frog-mouth helmet? It is true that medieval people would wear something underneath it, but generally speaking, the single one component that would prevent the metals of the helmet to sit directly onto your skull, onto your head, would be the liner. So rather than thinking, well, medieval people will wear something underneath it and then put the helmet on top, what's really doing the job for you when it comes to comfort is the liner that would be sewn inside. That's why you have all of those rivets. You see all of those rivets? They're not there just to connect the different plates to the helmet. They're also there so that you can attach a liner inside. And all medieval helmets were lined. They had a liner inside.
So it's tricky to know what to do because this is a really early one, but this would have saved an awful lot of people's heads in the early medieval period. So I think I'm going to start off with a solid B.
I don't mind that, but I would say that once you do, because I understand where he's coming from in his logics, but then again, once you add the other helmets, then this is going to go down to a D.
This is a solid start to our efforts to find ways to protect our heads, but it will probably be overtaken by later developments.
It will absolutely be overtaken by later developments, because if that wasn't the case, then this would have remained just a standard issue. But the reason why development happened is precisely because they will outrank this helmet monumentally. I'm very curious to see how he's going to handle that.
So next up, the Sutton Who helmet. So this is quite often associated with an Anglo-Saxon king.
Yep.
We don't really know who it belonged to. It's definitely from the Anglo-Saxon period in England.
He just got 500 points with me because he said Anglo-Saxon period, since now seems like university in the UK are starting to say you shouldn't say Anglo-Saxon period for political reasons. So I appreciate that he did that. He stuck to the nomenclature that doesn't need to be changed. Link in the description for proof of what I just stated. My dedicated video.
It was uncovered in 1939 when the Sutton Who burial ship was found. And we can see it has a strong resemblance to the Spangle Helm of the period. It's got some added cheek guards down the side, some neck protection at the back, and then it's got this interesting face plate on it. So this may have acted as something like a crown. This would be easily identifiable, and this would broadcast power and wealth.
That's the historian coming through. So I think up to this point, we'll see. I don't want to misjudge or anything, but what you can see is that when it comes to the history, then he's spot on because that's his field. But when it comes to the way these helmets functioned, that's when he may be lacking in direct experiential knowledge. When you don't have direct experiential knowledge, which is oftentimes a problem with historians who don't have reenactment experience, what happens is that you'll try and use your reasoning to speculate. Sometimes you'll manage, sometimes you'll fail. Let's see if my theory is correct.
And position. So how would we rate the Sutton Who helmet? It may have been designed more as something like a crown. It's really distinctive. But if you were to wear this into battle, the protection level seems like it would be actually quite good. They've taken something like a Spangle Helm and they've added cheek protection, neck protection, and that face plate. So it's protecting as much of your face as it possibly can with as few gaps as possible. I guess we could give this a 9 out of 10 for...
That's very high for such an old helmet though, considering that you are spanning all the way up to the 15th and 16th century for what I could see in the little preview. So if you already give it a 9, and then you give, what are you gonna give a frogmouth, a 15?
Protection if it was used on a battlefield. In terms of visibility, adding that faceplate and those cheek pieces is really restricting your visibility. You've got...
It's not. Let me prove it to you. 2 ways in which I'm going to prove my point without any shadow of a doubt. First, faceplates is something that you do wear if you do, for example, samurai or feudal Japanese reenactment. When you have a mask, now in this case, this one is only protecting this part. But if we look at the mempo my other mempo that I have, you can see that the opening for the eyes is actually very, very similar to this. And I can tell you 100% my vision is absolutely unobstructed. Nothing, zero, no changes. How can I prove it to you if you don't own a samurai mask set? Just do this. Do this. You can do it right now. You could do it like this, just as long as you keep your hands flat. Because if you do this, then you're obstructing. But do this, which is what the helmet is doing, and then you'll know your vision is absolutely not impeded in any way, shape, or form. Neither your direct vision, neither your peripheral. Your vision with helmets starts to get impeded somewhat when you start doing this. Okay?
2 eye holes, which should allow you to see pretty well straight in front of you, but I think you're probably going to struggle with any kind of peripheral vision.
He's incorrect. Yeah, I was right. I think I was right when I said earlier on, he's good with the history, but he has no experience. This helmet, Matt, this massive frog mouth does not impede my peripheral vision at all. I know this may be weird to believe. I can in fact see much more than I had expected when it comes to peripheral vision. So anything in front of me, I can see no problem. And my peripheral vision goes all the way up to here. So of course, anything to my sides, I can't really see, but I can move my torso and see. The real problem when it comes to vision is anything below this line. But this helmet actually blocks my vision down here, not peripheral vision. And if this doesn't, that absolutely wouldn't. But you would only know that if you have worn a helmet like that. Peripheral vision isn't a problem at all with that, and with a lot of helmets, in fact.
So anybody who's running in at you from the side, you're probably not going to see that hit coming.
Not true.
So I'm probably going to have to give this a 4 out of 10.
I will give it a 10 out of 10.
For visibility. And in terms of comfort, I think although this would have been designed for someone prestigious, and possibly a king, it doesn't look massively comfortable to me to wear. It's not the sort of thing I think I'd want to run into battle. I think I'd be worried about these cheek pieces flapping around and this faceplate flapping around.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah, I could hear the facepalm of my fellow ancient Roman reenactors. But please be nice to the guy, because Matt is cool. I would enjoy going out for a beer, but I do need to explain this. So, you've got cheek plates with this ancient Roman design, which is a Gallic, Imperial Gallic type H. Majority of Roman helmets had this sort of design. You know how you avoid this? You tie it to your chin. And once it's tied to your chin, these are kept in place for the duration of whatever battle you're doing. You can move it however you want. It doesn't do anything. So, yeah, that's another... So sorry to say, but it's incorrect. No, it wouldn't flap. You would just tie it and you'd be okay. Just like with any other helmet of the kind.
I feel like this wouldn't be the most comfortable helmet to wear, so I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10 for comfort.
Give it a 9.
So I think this is maybe more for show than
or
for
10.
protection. And I think maybe I'm going to give this a C. It's kind of a fancy pants battle helmet, but I'm not sure I would have wanted to wear it if I was going into a fight. And the next helmet that we have is a Kettle Helm. So
Love it.
This is possibly the successor to the Spangle Helm as being the most ubiquitous form of head protection through the high medieval period.
I mean, he's right. I mean, Kettle helmets were very popular, particularly in England, in Germany, some parts of Italy. But the one he's holding, which is very similar to this, is not an early or a high medieval helmet. In fact, it's a late medieval iteration. This specifically is a late 15th century kettle hat in the northern Italian style. And one of the ways you can recognize easily kettle helmets is in their shapes is that when they look more like actual hats, they are earlier types. But when they look more like salots, it means that they've already gone through a few stages of evolution until they will actually become salots. That's how it works. And also, since I was talking about the liner, you can see it here once again.
We can see that it's constructed from a single piece of metal. So if a sword blow was coming down onto the head, it would slide off this, the idea being that it wouldn't make it to your neck or your
Very good. Yeah, I agree with him. It provides good neck protection.
shoulders or your back. So there's that extra level of protection that we didn't have from the helmets before. I mean, this is a fairly standard piece of headwear. Almost anyone that's fighting in the medieval period, particularly the high medieval period, is likely to be wearing something like this if they're not the nobility. So in terms of protection, it's doing a good job, much like earlier helms, at protecting the top of your head. This flare here is adding some protection to the face and the neck to blows that are coming down on you. So I'm probably going to give this a 7 out of 10 for protection. It's not really doing anything for your face and your neck or...
Hold on a minute, you said I was agreeing with you, Matt, and now you disagreed with yourself. It is doing protection for your neck. Maybe you got confused? Yeah, he must have got confused because he repeated it twice, that the correct statement that it does protect your neck. So he must have misspoken. So I'll give you some space, man. I'll give you some space. Sorry about that.
Anywhere like that, but a solid job on the top of your head. In terms of visibility, there's almost nothing with this to obstruct your visibility. I think you should be able to see everything on the battlefield. Yeah. We've got nothing blocking your field of vision, so I probably have to give this a 10 out of 10 for visibility. You should be able to see really, really clearly all around you. That's at the expense of the protection, of course.
Of course.
And in terms of comfort, this is a mass-produced helmet. It's not going to be designed specifically to fit my head.
Yes, it will. These come in all forms and in all levels of quality. So the one that I have here, you see, nice, pearl polished. This would have been designed for a nobleman or a veteran, very successful man-at-arms, because at the end of the day, a knight, including mounted nobility, would own lots of different types and sets of helmets. So when you are getting ready to charge, yes, you want something more protective than this, possibly with a full visor or maybe like a great helmet. But when you are in camp, you're doing reconnaissance, you're doing some light cavalry action, you could totally swap into one of these. So yeah, if you're a nobleman or a wealthy man-at-arms, you would get these tailor-made for you. But the ones that he's talking about also existed, some sort of off-the-shelf for the militia or for the low-ranking freaking billman, then yeah, in that case too. But they would exist on both ends. So the idea the kettle hats were only for mass-produced for the masses is incorrect.
So I'm going to have to put up with whatever they think is the standard size of a medieval soldier's head. It may not be the most comfortable because it's not specifically made for me, but there's no reason to think that that's particularly uncomfortable with a little bit of padding added to it. So I'm maybe going to give it an 8 out of 10 for comfort.
Yeah, padding,
this is cheap and easy to produce from a single piece of metal, and so becomes incredibly common. I guess it's the equivalent of the Spangle Helm for the later medieval period. So I'm probably going to give that a B as well. It does a solid job of protecting the wearer.
Fair.
But is pretty unspectacular. So a Norman helm, called a nasal helm too. And again,
see, this is so strange. Why do they have a whole section about the Norman helm, which is pretty much the same thing as this one? And the way I'm going to justify that is because when they did this one, they actually showed the Norman helmets in the Bayeux tapestry. So, okay, so I just watched it, and yeah, he says the exact same things, exact same points. He doubles down on this idea that, oh, the male, you're only protected on the top, but you're not protected here, which once again, it's a little bit fallacious because they would be wearing these with male. We're going to skip it because it's the exact same points. With the only difference that the Spangle Helm he gave comfort 7 and the Norman Helm he gave comfort 8, and I have no idea why. No idea. Great helm.
For a lot of people, this will be crusading movements as we go into the... Next, we've got the Great Helm. So this emerges as part of the crusading movements as we go into the 12th and 13th centuries. And I guess for a lot of people, this will be the medieval helm. This will be the one that you would imagine. And in contrast to virtually all of the other ones that we've seen, it protects the whole of your head and your face. I've actually got a real great helm. So I'm going to try and show you the problems with this.
Yeah, the problems with that is that it's not a real great helm. Sorry, I'm mean cheeky.
Pop this great helm on. If I think about the protection that I'm getting from this, I'm protected everywhere. So top of my head, the sides of my face, the back of my head. It's doing a really good job of keeping me safe. So I'm probably going to have to give this a 10 out of 10 for protection.
Sure. Did you notice that he's holding it up? That tells me that the helmet does not have a liner because it's a cheap Indian replica. The holes here are too large. The overall design is very machine produced. So unfortunately, Matt, any conclusion you draw from this is going to be inconclusive at best and completely inaccurate at worst. Now, before I sort of mention my replica, I do want to say, which is still a great helm but a different period, I do want to underline one thing because I don't want to sound like an asshole. I would never make fun of someone, for example, say you watching these videos that you want to have fun, but you don't have much money. And so you spend, like, you buy a helmet like this for $30, $40 as opposed to this, which cost $500. And that's what you can afford. And I would never come to you and tell you, well, it's inaccurate, because I would never do that. Because, it's fine. Have fun, enjoy, have your fun. Who am I to come and rain on your parade? But when a historian is using it to draw conclusion about the real stuff, then I have to underline it. I'm not trying to attack people. I have to point out the differences. And I will. When I let him finish, and then I'll tell you not only the differences between a real one and this, but I will point out something that people do bring up a lot incorrectly when they say, well, but cheap helmets would have existed in the medieval period too. I'll tell you why that's not valid.
Pretty much every bit of me is as safe as it can possibly be. In terms of visibility, I can see next to nothing. I've got a very thin strip of the room that I can see. I can't see over to the side. I can't see anything above me. I'm getting absolutely lost in this helmet. I'd imagine this is quite disorienting. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10 for visibility.
And once again, if the helmet was correctly made, you would have given it a little higher. I'm not going to say that visibility is fantastic in these. It's not, which is why then in the development of helmets, they'll come up with visors. With that being said, that's not a good way to test it, Matt.
Maybe I'm being generous. Maybe it should be a 2. What do you reckon? And what about comfort? I mean, I would say that I'm wearing this on my head, and any self-respecting knight who's going to go and try and fight in this is going to be wearing padding on his head. He may well be wearing a mail coif over the top of that, so there will be lots to bulk his head out. So that's the reason my head is getting slightly lost inside this helmet without all of that. So it would be designed to make it as comfortable as possible, but it's quite claustrophobic. I've got a bit of ventilation right in front of me here, but it's still quite claustrophobic, and if I'm out of breath, am I going to want to be in here desperately trying to breathe while I'm sweating and trying to fight whoever it is that I can manage to see in front of me? I'm probably going to give this a 5 out of 10 for comfort.
Okay, so I think it's a good point to discuss what I wanted to discuss. So, now, when I wear my great helm, because of the fact that these ocularia, yes, they're thinner, as they should be, but they are also longer and extend to the side, it means that this will not compromise my side vision as his version does. Also, good helmets that are made properly, they tend to fit correctly, which means that the ocularia will align properly to your eyes, whereas helmets that are often made cheaply, like the ones that are usually produced in India, apparently people say that that's racist of me and I shouldn't point it out, but I am going to point it out because it's a fact. Not attacking Indians, of course, it's just a fact. But anyways, those do not align properly, the ocularia are not shaped correctly, and so they do feel very awkward, absolutely. But another thing I want to say is this point of equivalence, which is logically inconsistent. Not that he made it, but people will. A cheap modern helmet, like the one he has, is not the same as a cheap medieval helmet or period helmet. Because a cheap medieval helmet would be cheap without compromising those functional aspects of it that armorers would, of course, know, that's what they do, such as shape, correct alignment, proper thickness. Those would not be compromised to make it cheap. What's gonna make it cheap is how much work you put into it, is how rough you leave it, and of course it won't have a nice finish or a nice polish. And that wouldn't really matter to people, because if they are like infantry soldiers and whatnot, because then they can paint it if they really want to make it look nice. And that's what they did when they didn't have much money. People with a lot of money, they could get this nice shiny polish, and this would be obviously made in a much more qualitative way. Instead, modern cheap helmets, they compromise all of the shapes that would make it useless in a battlefield in the medieval period, but they give you the nice mirror polish, because that's cheap to make today with machines. You see how they are not equivalent, therefore? And that's why a cheap modern helmet is not a good indicator to how these helmets would have functioned. Not to mention that, yes, it's not nice to be in there if you're a little claustrophobic, but it is preferable to be introduced to the business end of an axe in your face.
And it just feels really claustrophobic in there. So you're getting maximum protection from your great helm, but it comes with the restriction of your field of vision and some of your breathing too. I mean, I guess if you can cope with that breathing, it might end up somewhere really high up on the tiers. But for me, the lack of vision that you're going to suffer from in this drags it right the way down. I'm going to plonk this in a C as well.
And unfortunately, that doesn't make sense. You think that because you're thinking, well, when I wear the Spangle Helm or the Kettle hat, I can breathe and I love it. That is actually kind of funny, because if you join a medieval full charge without this, it is a lot more likely that you won't breathe ever again. So this, yes, should go into A.
I don't think I would want to wear that. I might feel safe, but I also wouldn't have a clue who's trying to hit me from where. The next helmet I've got to rank is a pig-faced helmet. So these are developments of these closed-face helmets that seek to offer as much protection as they possibly can.
Yeah.
This covers all of your head and your neck. It also covers your face with a visor that will quite often lift up. And the pig nose at the front is really designed to increase the ventilation. So here we're trying to combat the problem that you might get with something like a great helm.
And it's designed to deflect arrows and projectiles first, and then any point of a sword, spear, poleaxe, what have you, that is trying to get contact to your face. Because if it's a flat surface, much of that energy will be transmitted onto your spine, whereas if it's a shape like that, and you imagine that an arrow is coming your way, it will very much likely be deflected to the sides. That is the primary function of that design, rather than your ability to breathe. You know why? Because if you want to breathe, you can lift the visor.
I think this is a much better version of a full head covering.
Yes.
There's much more visibility because there's a single slit instead of the two separate eyes.
Now, two separate eyes work absolutely very well. You don't need visibility in the center here necessarily. And for example, the A69 from the Wallace Collection is an excellent example of a pig-faced bassinet that works excellently. Although
it's still really, really restrictive. And the ventilation has got to be better in this. If you're charging around a battlefield out of breath, I think you've got a better hope of being able to get some fresh air into this without having to lift it up. I think in terms of protection, this is doing a really good job. It's a full face, whole head system that is protecting as much as it possibly can do. So I'm probably going to give this 9 out of 10 for protection.
Yeah.
In terms of visibility, we are stuck with that narrow slit that is really going to hamper our visibility. We're not going to be able to see anybody coming from the sides. We're going to struggle with anything from behind us.
Well, you would struggle for everything from behind you, regardless of whether you're wearing a helmet or not, mate. Sorry for that, but I just couldn't help it. If you wore an original, or if you wore a very good replica of, say, the A69, you would change your mind immediately.
Above, and we're not going to be able to see our own feet if we're worrying about tripping over anything. So I'm going to have to give this a 4 out of 10 for visibility. And in terms of comfort, I think there's no reason to think this wouldn't be uncomfortable. I think it would possibly be quite comfortable for a closed face helmet in the sense that the pig nose is designed to give you much more ventilation, make it much easier for you to breathe and therefore keep you comfortable while you're on the battlefield. But it still is something covering your face while you're trying to fight. So I guess I'd probably give it 6 out of 10 for comfort. So
you should give it a better comfort than the Great Helm, absolutely. Once again, because of the function that you can lift it, and you will. Knights did lift it after the charge when they were in hand-to-hand. That's proven. If you've seen iconography, you know that, including duels.
I think I quite like this. If I was going to wear a closed face helmet, I think it would be something like this. So yeah, I'm probably going to give this an A.
Okay, that's fair.
Next up, we've got a Barbut.
Yeah, I love
Barbuts.
So
these develop really, we can see similarities to the Kettle Helm in that it's got this flaring, which would deal with any kind of sword blow. But it's adding to the protection that you're going to get from the sides, around your cheeks. We can also see sometimes you get this nasal guard added for extra protection. Quite a lot of Barbuts as well will have either a T shape or a Y shape.
The one on the right rings a bell.
Allows for ventilation of the mouth. We can see strong hints of ancient Greek helmets in here. So it harks back to Corinthian style helmets. And perhaps they've returned to something from the ancient world that just worked really, really well. Protection, I think this is doing a solid job. It's protecting the top of your head, it's looking after your neck for you, the cheek pieces are protecting the sides of your face. You can even add some nasal protection if you really want to. I guess it's not protecting the front of your face as well as some closed helmets might do. So I'm probably going to give it an 8 out of 10.
I would have given it a 7.
Protection. If we think about visibility, it's only restricting your visibility at the extremes of the periphery of your vision, I think. Those cheek plates might just get in.
It's not. Once again, I tested it with my replica. 0 peripheral vision impeded. 0, nothing.
In the way of you being able to see things, but otherwise, it seems to be working quite hard not to restrict your visibility too much. So I'm going to give it 8 out of 10 for visibility too. And in terms of comfort, there's no reason to think this is uncomfortable. I'm looking for an excuse to give a Barbut a 10 out of 10 because I love it. So I'm going to imagine that this is an incredibly comfortable helmet to wear, really snug, easy fitting, and I'm just going to give it 10 out of 10. I think if I'm going into a medieval battle, probably this is the helmet I'm going to wear. So I'm going to put this right at the top on my super tier.
I want to say something now. Barbuts are my second favorite helmet ever. Maybe third. Let's say third, but it's in my top 3. I love Barbuts, but I would not put a Barbut above a pig-faced bassinet. Like no, because a pig-faced bassinet gives you more versatility. You can close it, charge, boom, impact, open it. Whenever you need to breathe, look around. The Barbut does not give you that. So it was still used, absolutely. Medieval knights, there were some medieval knights who were like, yeah, that's me, Barbut. Sure. but the bassinet is objectively a better choice.
And that's probably going to be the one that I'm going to wear. Next up, we've got a Salot.
Okay.
Quite often here, when we talk about Salot, we're talking about just this helmet bit at the top. The throat and chin armour is added on as an extra piece.
Yeah.
And for me, this is essentially a slightly too big kettle hat. It's like wearing a kettle hat that's going to come and sit over your face, so it's got...
The early ones, yes, but then they developed that into a separate visor that can be lifted. So what he's saying now only applies to early prototypes.
to have that eye slit in it somewhere. And so if we think about ratings for a Salot, in terms of protection, it's doing a fair job of protecting the top of your head again. It's going to protect your neck a little bit if any blows are coming in from that kind of direction.
Particularly in the German style, which has the elongated tails.
So I guess I'd give it a 7 out of 10 for protection. Without this extra additional armour, it's doing nothing.
That's the part I think is misunderstanding. That is meant to be used that way. Does it mean that it was never the case that medieval knights didn't use it with a bever? No, it did happen. Sometimes they put mail. They were okay with mail, and sometimes they don't wear anything underneath. But it is meant, the one you're holding in your hand specifically, I would judge that. And that as I would say a solid 9 out of 10 for protection.
For your face and neck still. In terms of visibility, it's kind of the worst of both worlds. It's only protecting the top of your head effectively, but you've got that narrow slit.
But then again, even this one you're using, look, it can be lifted. Now, specifically, this one only lifts the lower rim. Some versions have the whole thing that lifts up. So it depends on the version. But the one you're holding, you have the choice. I think he's misunderstanding how much choice in a battlefield is critical as a positive aspect for a knight. Because, yeah, you could be like, oh, no, I feel so much more comfortable with a helmet that is nice and open. And that is a reasonable choice. But if you see enemy archers looking at you, and they are starting to draw, I think you would like, in that point, the ability to at least choose.
To hamper your vision too. So I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10 for visibility. And for comfort, I feel like it would just be an uncomfortable helmet to wear. I just don't like a Salot. So I'm going to have to give this, I guess, a 5 out of 10 for comfort.
I was expecting a 1.
I don't think this does a particularly great job for me. It's kind of the worst of both worlds. Closed helm, but it isn't protecting your whole face unless you add another piece of armour to it. It's almost a kettle hat, but it's restricting your visibility and everything else. So this might be really, really unpopular. I don't like Salots. I am going to stick this down on the D tier and wait for everyone to tell me how wrong I am.
Yeah, so here's the thing. It's not that you're wrong for having an opinion, Matt. You can have your own favorites. But like I was saying earlier on before, the Barbut is one of my favorite, but just because it's one of my favorite, I'm not going to put it up when it comes to effectiveness and say it's doing a better job than helmets that I like less, even though they're objectively doing a better job of what they're doing. Salot with bever should be A.
Right, next up, if I survive putting the Salot on a D tier, is just a closed helm. So again, this is a variant on the idea of protecting your whole face. We've got a visor with some ventilation in there, and we've still got that narrow strip for visibility. In terms of protection, again, it's doing a really, really good job of that. The ventilation around the face maybe would allow some things to get through. It has to have an eye slit, so I guess we're going to give this 8 out of 10 for protection. It's protecting your whole head, your neck, your face.
It's like he doesn't see how helmet evolution works through the centuries. It's like we go first, the earlier, easier, simpler types get very high levels, including in protection. And then after hundreds and hundreds of years of experience for these metallurgists and armorers, somehow now they're getting lower numbers, which is really, really confusing. You gave a 10 to a great helm, which is a much more primitive form of protection than what you're holding in your hands, which is really the pinnacle of the evolution of helmets and knightly armor. That needs a 10. And after you give a great helm a 10, this needs a 15. This is how it is. Also, he calls it closed helmets. There is a little bit of a discussion between what the difference between an armet and a closed helmet is. And generally speaking, within the world of students of armor, it's the way it's closed. So a closed helmet closes like this, and So an armet closes like this and it's connected like this, and then an actual closed helm opens and closes this way. But in period, they were all called armets. A little piece of advice, a little clarification I wanted to make. This is S tier.
If we think about visibility, it's going to be severely restricted in this still. We've got a single eye slit instead of it being divided into two, which might tip it up a tiny little bit, but you're still not going to see anything in your peripheral vision. You can't look up. You're going to struggle to look down without raising your visor. So I'm probably going to give this a 4 for visibility. And in terms of comfort, I mean, I imagine this would be reasonably comfortable. It's got a bit of ventilation in the front, so if you're running around the battlefield,
Yeah, there we go. There he is. It's a armet in the Maximilian style. Yeah, armet in the Maximilian style, very similar to mine here. Very similar.
Getting out of breath, you can at least try and get some fresh air in through those vents. So I guess I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 for comfort. So again, you're sacrificing visibility and ventilation in favour of protection here. I think it does a good job of both. I'd probably prefer this to a great helm.
Good.
But I wouldn't like it as much as my frognose helm if that's going to give me more ventilation and more room to breathe. These become incredibly common throughout the medieval period and even into the early modern period. But I think I'm probably going to stick this on my B. It's maybe an average.
Matt, how is an armet worse than a bassinet? If it's better than a bassinet, because it's more evolved bassinet. That's what it is. It's the evolution from the bassinet. How is it worse? I don't understand the logics.
Helmet. And next up, we have a frogmouth helmet, designed to look a little bit like a frog's mouth. The issue I have with this, I guess, is that this is not something anyone would ever have worn into a medieval battle. This is
incorrect. I keep hearing this over and over again. These helmets were absolutely worn in battle. The later versions become specialized jousting gear. With that being said, we have so much iconography that demonstrates that these helmets were worn, at least the earlier versions, the frogmouths, were absolutely worn in the field of battle, that I don't know why historians keep repeating this sentence. It's simply not true. Were they connected or secured the same way? No. Possibly during a battle, they would be suspended a little bit, whereas in the joust, they would be strongly and securely connected to your breastplate. That is because when they are connected, you can't move as well, your head, but when they are suspended, you absolutely can. That's a myth.
Strictly a jousting helmet.
No.
There is no ventilation anywhere around your mouth, and the angle at which the eye slit sits is designed for jousting. It's designed to stop splinters going into your eyes.
It's not true. It's not designed for jousting, which is why early frog helms were used in battle. It's designed for protection, for maximum protection. This is the most protective helmet ever.
And absorb as much of the blow of the lance without the possibility of injury. So the frogmouth helmet, if I was going to rate this in terms of the protection it's giving you, it's designed to give you
10.
the absolute maximum
20.
protection. There are as few holes and gaps in this helmet as there could possibly be. Even though it's not designed for fighting on a medieval battlefield, I guess we probably have to give it 10 out of 10 for protection. It's doing an incredible job on that front. In terms of visibility, this is literally designed so that you can see directly in front of you in a straight line and nothing else.
So wrong. I'm sorry, Matt. I don't mean to be, because I like you. But I've demonstrated the peripheral vision in my frogmouth is excellent.
There is no room for any splinter to get at you from any other angle. So your visibility is going to be hugely impaired while you're wearing this. I'm going to give it a 2 for visibility. I'm sure you can see what you're meant to see in a jousting helmet, but really not much else. And in terms of comfort, I think I'd probably just give this a solid 7. I imagine it's not uncomfortable. There's no ventilation in front of your mouth for when you're breathing, but for a jousting helmet, you're only wearing it for short periods too. I guess it would be okay.
This is actually a discussion I had with Jason Kingsley, because we both own frogmouths, but the difference between me and Jason Kingsley is that he has direct full contact jousting experience. And you know what he told me? That the frogmouth is so uncomfortable for him that he can't wait to take it off after, he jousts. So I'm so surprised that the one point that I thought we would agree on, the comfort, because again, it's my favorite helmet ever. I love the frog mouths. But comfortable, I mean, this is the one that you should have brought up, the claustrophobia situation. I'm not claustrophobic, I can wear it. But then again, not the most comfortable.
If I'm going into a joust, I might want to wear this helmet. If I'm going into a medieval battle, I'm definitely not wearing this. So this is going to go and sink all the way down to my D tier.
Yeah, that's I think the situation with this whole discussion. It's based on his own experience, which he doesn't have any, and therefore he's just speculating. But the reality of fact is, the moment you give him all of these helmets, but in historically accurate replicas, he would change all of this around. I can promise you that. In fact, Matt, if you ever come to the US, let me know. We can meet, and I'll have you try the helmets, and we can redo this together.
I'm not fighting in that. So next up, we've got the Moran Helmet. And this becomes really popular, I guess, in the 16th, 17th century. We would probably associate it with the idea of the conquistadors. It's a classically Spanish look. The first conquistadors to make it to the Americas probably wouldn't have been wearing these helmets yet. They come a little bit later than that. Has strong similarities to the kettle hat, with even more flair out here to prevent blows from moving down the body. And this crest that moves across the top was designed to strengthen the helmet further, so to make it even firmer and better to use. And again, this is fairly cheap, mass producible. I mean, we see versions of things like this re-emerging in World War I and World War II, when British soldiers are given essentially tin hats to protect their heads.
I'd say they would be the recreation or resurgence of the kettle hat, if I really have to be honest, the early forms.
From modern warfare in the 20th century. In terms of protection, it's going to give you a great deal of protection to the top of your head. Any blows coming in from here are going to be dealt with and taken away. Doesn't really do anything for the face or the neck at all. So I'm going to give it maybe a 7 out of 10 for protection.
I thought you would go down to a 4, considering how you were getting tired at this point.
Visibility, I mean, it's not blocking your visibility really in any direction unless something was coming from above. So I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 maybe, just for having a wide...
Even in that case, you just do this. And because the helmet is here, it pivots and it doesn't block anything from above at all.
Brim on it. And in terms of comfort, I should imagine these things were fairly comfortable, despite the fact that they're mass produced and therefore the lower ranks of soldiers mainly. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 for comfort. So I quite like the Moran. I mean, it looks a little bit flash and fancy maybe, but I think it's going to do a really good job, maybe a better job than the original kettle hat that it's replacing. So I'm going to put this up on my A tier. I might actually want to wear that if I didn't want anything covering below my head. And the next one that we have, the Horned Helmet of Henry VIII. This was a gift that was given to Henry VIII by the Emperor Maximilian, the Holy Roman Emperor. I'm not sure what it says that Maximilian thought about Henry. I mean, it's not exactly attractive. It's got devil's horns. It's wearing spectacles. This is part of a jousting set of armour again, never meant to be worn in battle or in anger. So I think in terms of...
Probably in a joust.
Protection, I'm not sure. I mean, it covers the whole of your head. Is it actually going to protect you in a fight? I'm not sure. I'm going to give it maybe a 7. I think in terms of visibility...
It's an armet.
You're not going to see a fat lot out of this helmet. It's designed for jousting when you don't have to see too much that's coming, but the visibility is going to be pretty awful in that. I'm going to give it a 2 for visibility, and I don't know whether that would be comfortable. It's designed for a king. It's designed for him to be worn, I guess, when he's jousting. Henry is going to want to be comfortable, so maybe we have to give it a 9 for comfort. This is made by an emperor for a king. If I had an E tier, I might put it on the E tier as a bit of a joke, but no one's ever going to wear this. It's going to have to sit down here on the D tier, I think. I hope you've enjoyed me trying to rank medieval helmets. I'm sure you'll think I've got some of these, maybe all of them, wrong. Let me know in the comments which one should have...
But that's what I like about him, that he's very humble when it comes to... Like, he's not arrogant. Some people can get really arrogant even when they're wrong. And personally, I don't mind. I know it's going to be... You won't agree with me necessarily, but I don't mind when people are arrogant if they know what they're talking about. I respect skill. I don't like it, but I don't mind it. But I hate people that are arrogant when they know nothing. He may not be very experienced when it comes to helmets, as we could see, but he's humble about it, which is what I appreciate of him.
Been at the top and which one should have been at the bottom. I know there'll be reenactors out there who maybe wear one of these helmets and want to tell me where I've gone horrendously wrong in my rankings and my ratings. If there's anything else you'd like to see us rank in this kind of way, then please let us know. We're always looking for more ideas. Pop a comment below. As always, like this video and subscribe to History Hits channel for more from the greatest channel in history.
Well, you know what? I would do it. Because the thing is, when it comes to Wired, I don't like Wired. So even if they invited me, I don't think I would go. With History Hit, if they asked me, hey Metatron, we saw you make this react, could you please record this for us and we can do a collaboration, I would do it. I would do it because some of their experts I really like. It's just that, and others I don't like. Now, I don't know if they're offended because I kind of debunked a couple of their experts. If that's the case, that's fine. I can do it on my own channel, and I probably will. But if they did ask me, if they reached out and said, hey, Metatron, could you make remake this episode for us? And then, yeah, I would love to do it. Not because I think that I'm the know-it-all, but simply because I've worn these helmets because I have a massive passion for it. It's been over 10 years now that I've done historical reenactment, and I've tried all sorts of very good high-end. And that is because I'm privileged. But due to my job, I can spend, there we go, 1,500 euros on this, which actually was pretty cheap, to be honest, considering how well it's made. It was made by a Ukrainian armorer, and he needed money to leave the country so that he could take his family to a safe place I think he moved to Poland, and so I was happy to help, and also at the same time buy myself a birthday gift. But then again, a lot of people do not have that ability to do that and spend thousands of dollars into helmets. So I am privileged due to what I do, and therefore but that also gives me the ability to speak about experiential knowledge when it comes to these helmets. So yeah, more than happy to. If they hate my guts, then I guess I'll just make it on my channel. Thank you so much, Noble Ones. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thanks, Matt. I had a good afternoon anyways, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.